Very smooth. Thank you. I'm going to hand straight over to Sam, but hello everyone. Welcome to our Youth Voice and Power Hour.
Hi everyone. I was thinking that all Zoom calls should start with music. It's a really good way of, making the online space seem that much more exciting. We've got a few people coming in. Phoebes, are you happy to let the people in the waiting room in? Thanks. So yeah, hi everyone. Morning, afternoon. Thanks very much for joining us on this Empower Hour, where we're delighted to welcome Liz Birch, who is a music leader and works on various projects, including Matt Makes Music, Quench Arts, and various others, and also Freya, Holly, and Joseph from Jubacana. Hello. So yeah, I'm very happy to be welcoming them to talk about youth voice. So yeah, basically this session, we're going to be going through a journey of youth voice, from how it can be defined, what it means for young people and organizations, and what youth voice and participation looks like in action. We hope everyone will come away with, well, I suppose with an increased understanding of youth voice, but also practical ideas of how you might apply it in your in your practice, in your projects, across your organization. So yeah, and also just to say, we're really happy to have Freya and Joseph here, who are young people themselves who have been involved in the Jubacana project for a long time, and they're going to share their own experiences about youth leadership in action, which is going to be really cool. So there's lots to get through, so I'll hand over shortly. But just before I do Zoom things, a couple of things, you're all very used to this, but we'll go through them. So you'll have seen the session will be recorded. If you prefer not to feature on the recording, then just turn your camera off. Also, if you just don't want your camera on, that's totally fine. Have it on or off, whatever you prefer. There's going to be time for interactive discussions during breakout sessions, but if you could keep yourself muted when we're in this main room, that would be great. There's time at the end for questions, so obviously just put your hand up or put them in the chat. The other thing as well is that if you do have a question during the session, we'll try and answer it at the end, but if we can't, we'll follow up and we'll try and answer the questions after the session. But if you do have one, just so it's clear that it's a question, if you could just put question in capital letters before your question. How many times do I say question? Lots. But yeah, big question. So yeah, capital letters, and then we can just sort of try and answer them and compile them together. If you're happy to, please put your name, preferred pronouns, and organization name, if applicable, in your Zoom name. It looks like those of you have done that already. And yeah, and then also just to re-emphasize, we've got an hour, we've got a lot to get through, but also we hope that this is just going to be a really useful way to start a bigger conversation and kind of give you steps to kind of increase your youth voice practice, and also afterwards, so we're going to follow up with contact details, so you can get in touch with Holly and Liz and Freya and Joseph if you want to ask further questions and to kind of chat more about youth voice after the meeting. So we'll follow up and with resources and stuff. So anyway, that's me done. I'll hand over to the exciting bit. Holly, Joseph, and Freya, Jubacana, take it away.
Take it away. Hi, everybody. Give us a little wave. Hello. I'd really like it before we start if everyone goes off mute and just says hello to each other. Just say hi into your mic or something like that, if that's all right. Hello.
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 Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Oh, it's rowdy now, you see. Right, there you go. Hi, everyone. I'm Holly. I'm one of the people who runs Jubacana, or I like to think that I'm increasingly one of the people losing my job at Jubacana. We are a youth-led organisation based in Oldham. I have several other arty hats that I wear, but today we're just going to focus on Jubacana. I just want to say, first of all, before we even start talking to each other, that I think something that struck me about being asked to talk about this topic was just that it's obviously you are all here through choice. I'm assuming you are anyway, I am. And that it's something that you're clearly passionate about or interested in or curious about or wanting to improve. And I think that's a really a conversation. So I just wanted to say thank you to you all before we even start, because I think it's something that every organisation maybe has something that they feel like they could either enhance or are possibly not being able to cover at the moment because of capacity or all kinds of different things. So it's great that you've taken this time to come and have a chat with us together. So thanks for that on behalf of everybody. If you want to make contact with us at any point after, we'll put that in the chat at the end, so that, or maybe if you need it sooner because you've got to leave, don't worry, we'll make sure you can get connected with us. So who am I and why am I here? So as I said, I'm Holly. I'm now a 38-year-old arts practitioner, facilitator, drummer, and new mother. So if I look a bit tired, that's what that's about. And I'm a director of a project called Jubacana, which basically we're a music and dance organisation. We're based in Oldham, but we serve all kinds of areas around us as well. And we are working ever more towards being completely youth-led at all stages of the organisation. So that's not just people leading the band or leading the dance routines. That's from project management to creating a youth steering group, writing funding bids, and everything that we all do on an appropriate level for young people. And increasingly, we're seeing young people coming through our organisation into their late teens and early 20s who are wanting to make that transition into the workforce. And so we are doing a lot of work around that particular thing. And I'm calling it work, but it's actually a lot of fun as well. So it's something that we're really enjoying doing. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I'm joined by our wonderful Freya and Joseph from Jubacana, who are going to talk about that in a moment. One of the reasons why I am passionate about this, that we are kind of here talking about, is because I had that journey myself. That is me with my spray painted boiler suit on when a drum outside a McDonald's that is no longer there on Market Street in Manchester around age 14, something like that, 1997. Woohoo! And this person here is Leon Patel, who is the CEO of Global Grooves, and myself as artistic director of Global Grooves. And we are people who've worked together since we were those teenagers starting out in the workforce, being supported and having our voices heard. And so it's something that's always been at the core of my work, is how can I facilitate this conversation and step back as much as I possibly can and have an authentic connection with that means something to me, that I can connect with from my own experience, and also do as much as I can to have people around who feel empowered. But it's not because I've done the empowering, if you see what I mean. It's just because they are taking that opportunity and running with it, as I'm sure many of you already are in your organisations. So through the session today, myself and Liz, who you'll meet in a little while, we are going to talk to you a little bit about the work that we do, the people that we hang with while we do it, and how you can take away a sort of a toolkit of ideas to maybe even take one, or perhaps a sort of a pledge that you might take at the end of the session of, oh, right, I'm going to do this one thing and I'm going to email that person tomorrow, or however you wish to do it. We're also going to touch on some of the things that you fed in as questions, that you said you were things that you wanted to talk about. So we have some questions around things like systems of organisation, support for young people in your groups, how to attract and engage young people in situations, for example, like COVID, how to get buy-in from your team, how to work with non-verbal participants and take their voice, and all this kind of thing. So we're going to do our best to answer as many of those questions in this short time that we've got. Moving on very quickly. So I'm going to hand over to Freya, who is one of our producers and artists and facilitators in Jubacana, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about a few things right now.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Holly. I'm going to use Holly's mic from her computer because I'm sat right next to her, but it's just technology, eh? So yeah, thanks, Holly. To introduce myself briefly, and I'm sure Joseph will later as well. I'm Freya. I work with Jubacana as kind of projects manager, as well as drumming in the band, dancing with people. I'm a dance artist myself, amongst many hats as we all wear. And yeah, I'm 21, so I'm kind of like, what I like to say is at the start of it doesn't feel like I'm at the start of the journey in some ways. I'm in the journey, but it feels like it's early days, and that excites me a lot. So yeah, I think worth getting stuck in, and Joseph, please introduce yourself in a bit when I pass that baton. But I think we wanted to start with getting everyone thinking a bit. I know it might still feel like it's not too early in the day, actually, is it? So just some things to think about, and then I'll open it up to discussion. So first, I wanted to ask what you think, and yeah, just thinking about it now, but if you want to pop thoughts in the chat, please feel free, about what is voice and what does it mean to have our voice heard? And then what is youth voice?
So I imagine in a lot of our projects, you know, we're probably all working with young people, aren't we? And I suppose traditionally those voices wouldn't necessarily be part of the organisation of those projects. But of course, with them being the participants, I guess their voice should be essential in the organisation.
Thanks, Will. No, thank you for that. I think hold on to that because we're going to have a bit of a discussion in a minute as well. Just one last thought for us all before we open the floor, is just if we think there are any differences between youth voice, adult voice, community voice, and just other types of voices that we might think.
There's some good comments in the chat.
That's really nice. Thank you, guys. I think let me just I'll have a quick read through these, or should we all, let's have a few more seconds just to read through these, and I'm going to ask a question just to kind of get us all chatting a bit. Are we doing a breakout room for this bit, or are we just...
No, let's just have a little chat together, yeah.
Dive in, but yeah, I'll just give you a few more seconds just to have a read through the chat, because there's some nice stuff coming through here.
Collective voice, love that. Just having a read of the chat. My laptop has forgotten how to do its work as well at the same time as me. Not heard, listen to.
Very nice. Thank you guys for engaging already. That's really nice. So yeah, just to open up a bit for group discussion, I wanted to ask so now we thought about the different kinds of voice and what we think that might mean. What might be the situations where young people feel they don't have their voices represented? It's quite provoking, that question, I'm aware. So you know, if you want to take a second to think, but yes, opening the floor now if anyone wants to dive in on that.
I'll sort of jump in where, like, I suppose it might be that you might have a situation where you feel like you're being listened to, but then actually you don't see any kind of tangible effect from what you've said. So it's, I suppose, like, you know, you might have a situation where actually you think that you've been listened to, but it's clear that you haven't, because nothing's been kind of taken forward.
Yeah. Totally. Beth has her hand up.
Yes, that made me think, actually, Sam. My 10-year-old daughter came home the other day really indignant because she said they'd done pupil voice at school and they were asked what they wanted to spend the playground equipment fundraising money on, and they'd all given their ideas, and then the teachers had gone and bought a load of basketballs, which they didn't ask, nobody asked for, and they were like, why did they bother asking us? They've just gone and bought what they wanted to buy anyway because they want us to do basketball, and we'd all said something else and they just ignored us. And I thought it's actually more damaging that they bothered to ask them and then ignored them than if they hadn't bothered to ask, because I saw firsthand the anger and the hurt. So yeah, that just your comment there just made me think.
Yeah, almost, well, it doesn't feel meaningful in that sense, does it? It's like tokenistic asking almost, and like, yeah, the question of did they listen? I don't know. Anyone else want to dive in? Got some stuff.
I think something around the tension around age and perspective is difficult to navigate, and what is the right thing or the wrong thing to think or have or do. So for young people, I think if they feel that their opinion isn't valid or that they're being told they're wrong by an older person, then that can be quite difficult to obviously they're not going to feel listened to, they're not going to feel valued. Yeah, but one of the challenges for me is around how do you, you're not always going to agree on things. So I suppose, what are the parameters around choice or voice, or that you're not, you can't do everything. Nobody can do it. You can't do everybody's idea or everybody's thing, but how do you make that decision, and what does that look like? So yeah, it's a tricky one, but I think that is the crux of it. If young people feel that their opinion isn't valid or isn't valued by people they're talking to, or they anticipate a judgment because of something that they think or feel, that could be really difficult to even have a conversation about something.
James, do you want to dive in before we might move on?
Yeah, it ties into that as well, and also noticed in the chat that the word autonomy, and I think maybe there's something here about leadership and ownership. I think sometimes it's quite easy to think that young people can be invited to feed into a process and then kind of adults go away and come up with the decisions. But actually, I think there's something really, really powerful about young people taking on that ownership and taking a leadership role. Adults in the workplace come up with ideas and have to deal with whether they're good ideas or not so good ideas as well. I think that's a very important thing to be thinking about as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice point, and I think, like Holly mentioned earlier, I think one thing that I felt in my own journey, not just with Jubacana, but in, like, I'm a trustee on a board as well of another arts organisation. Similar thing. It's like almost like not scaling the opportunities to be listened and have you put your voice into something, but it kind of being at an accessible level, like being on a board of trustees at 7 years old might not be beneficial or exciting, or I'm hoping you're kind of getting where I'm coming from with that, but I'm hard to articulate. I'm also aware of time, so I was wondering if, Holly, you wanted to add anything else before we move on.
No, definitely. Thanks everybody. Thank you for it. I think something that just occurred to me while I was listening to everybody speaking there and just reflecting on some of the things you were bringing up as a group, was that I think there is, and actually I'm going to level with you. This is just occurring to me in this sentence now, but are they young people, or are they just people? Because actually something that we're very good at doing as adults, or well, maybe not mentally, but as kind of adults and grown-up badges in our arts organisations, I feel like sometimes we're very good at saying these people are deprived, these people are young, these people are not, these people are this or that, the other. And I was watching the Freddie Flintoff documentary the other day, where some of the kids themselves were looking up who Freddie Flintoff was. If you haven't seen it, it's around Freddie Flintoff, the cricketer, doing making a community team and trying to train up a group of supposedly underprivileged young people who wouldn't ordinarily be able to access a posh sport like cricket, is the premise. And one of the kids in it just said to the camera, like, I don't want to be described as underprivileged and deprived. I'm just a kid. I just want to do that. And I thought, yeah, we're very good at applying labels and job titles to things sometimes, where actually just because somebody's 8 or 88, actually they're a person and they've got their own experience. And as Freya highlighted, it's a scalable experience that's relevant to that level of their life experience. And of course, you're right. In I think Esther, is it you that picked it up, saying kind of obviously you've got if you open the floor, sometimes you might get 50 suggestions and not all of them are appropriate, or maybe there's too much information. I think it's about, as an organisation or as an individual, being passionate and engaged about the fact that you want people to have a voice, not just young people or old people or people in the middle or whatever, and that you want to embed that culture in everything that you do. So for example, for me, I find it very challenging to have a conversation about young people or youth without having them being present, because I think they're a key part of the conversation. I don't wish to talk about anyone without them being represented in a situation. So unless it's just not possible for some capacity reason. So I think it's about taking that feeling that you've all got around what voice is, what your voice feels like, and how you feel when your voice is not heard. And like we were saying about the tokenistic thing about being in school, actually, what's the point in asking someone if you're not going to take it on? You might as well spend more time just doing really nicely facilitated work than spending time facilitating consultation and then not taking on the feedback in a way. I think that sometimes we can also be sort of tempted to do projects at people sometimes. And this is not a new thing that I'm coming up with, this concept of kind of going into a community or into an age bracket and saying, right, you're a teenager, so I think you need this. Actually, sometimes just asking, what do you need? What do you want? We work in the Oldham community, for example, and there are lots of kind of sub-communities within that in a variety of ways, whether that's age, background, religion, race, all kinds of different things. And we might have assumed in one start of that project that we needed a certain thing. And actually, when we've asked people, they often want something slightly different than what you imagine. So sometimes with young people being the focus of today, I think it's kind of asking, what do they want from their project? What do they enjoy most about that project? What can you run with? And what can you kind of collaborate on? So if you are a practitioner that's saying, actually, I think they do possibly need to do a little bit of, for example, I'm a percussion artist, so I might say they need to do a little bit of technical practice, but how can we make it fun? How can we do things that work with songs that they like? How can I bring out the voice of a young person who, for example, we have a selective mute in Jubacana who doesn't like to speak in front of the group. That's absolutely fine. We never ask them to do that. We might, for example, do an activity that's not a verbal activity to gather that feedback. So if it's, right, what do you all think of this? Do you want to do this or that? Maybe it might be show of hands. Maybe it might be stand on one side of the room. Maybe it might be doing a drum rumble, low or quiet. I don't know. There are different ways that we can gather this feedback for the questions that we want to ask. Again, just for time, because obviously we are a little bit limited for time today, I'd like to hand over to Joseph to share a bit of his experience about being a young person in Jubacana who's a slightly younger leader within the group, about kind of how Jubacana does this work and how we, I suppose, a set of kind of very tangible things, and I might add to it, but obviously, Joseph, feel free to share some of the things that we are doing. Hand over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Joseph. I'm 14, so I'm quite sort of new to the whole sort of art stuff, but I've done quite a lot of stuff recently with Holly and Freya within Jubacana. I'm a drummer and I've been at Jubacana about 3 years now. And I'm going to share with you like a toolkit of things you could take back to your organization and projects that we do that might be helpful for you guys to use. And like Holly says, she might just pitch in, and if any questions, just put them in the chat. So the first thing that we do is we get young people to help us write elements of funding bids. So not a sense of, making them write the whole funding bid, putting so much pressure on them in sort of a way of them pitching in. So not necessarily writing it, but sort of pitching in ideas. And then obviously Holly or Freya could sort of write it for them, but it's sort of the sense that everyone gets sort of an idea. And I think last time we did one, it was this thing of some of the older members of the group recording voice notes of sort of their opinions of how we did things. And I think that really sort of helped get people involved as we can. The next one is what we do is we write our own set lists as a group. So over the last 3 months, we've had quite a lot of gigs. And before that, we all came together and we wrote the set list, because we had quite a few sort of things coming up all at once. And that was sort of a group decision, and sort of based on, the tempo of the songs, what people wanted, where they wanted them. And it was sort of that, again, was a group decision, but it was not forced either. So it wasn't sort of pointing someone out and saying, you choose where this song goes. It was who wants this to go where. It was sort of an open discussion we all had as a group. And the next thing is, so when someone first comes and plays with us, or at sort of any point in the project, they can choose whatever instrument they want to play. So it's not a sense of you have to play this, you have to play this. It's sort of, what do you want to play? How do you want to learn it? And that also comes into, we hold melody and drum kit sessions as well. We try and do those every couple of months. And so what that does is it's sort of open to the group. You not have to do it. So you just come along, you bring your instrument. We teach flute, bass and guitar and drum kit as well. And that gives people an opportunity to sort of be part of the whole band. So like Holly says, sort of the ultimate goal is to sort of get the whole band as like a youth. So then we'd have like a melody section, drum kit, lead, everything would be youth, which we are very close to now. We're sort of building that up with everyone helping out. The next point is, so the band age is 8 to 18. So we have sort of a wide range of ages within the band. And if a young person wants to be employed by us, they can be, and they'll be trained as they age out the projects, and they'll be helped with that while they do that. And it's really, it's important to us that sort of people within the projects and organizations, sort of, if they want a job with us, they can have one. And I think that's sort of really thing that Holly and Freya really want to help enforce. And I think Freya wanted to talk a bit more about how to support people in paid roles within that. So if I just hand back over to Freya, that's all right.
That's on fast. Thanks. Now I think it's interesting because I was just a year older than Joseph when I joined Jubacana, and never played drums before, and also like never worked closely with young people, although I knew at that point that I was interested in like teaching, like I wanted to teach dance, that was my thing, which I do get a chance to now, which is really nice. But I think yeah, kind of being involved as a participant, moving up through the projects, and especially kind of maturing more and maturing my ideas of what was possible, whilst like being a part of something like Jubacana, and hearing about things like project management and what's involved with that, or yeah, those kind of sides to it. I think that was really interesting, and it felt like I hadn't, the opportunity to try different things, hear about different things, and almost find a path that might interest me as part of like my progression. I'll still play with the group, but yeah, it was kind of a pathway which I almost feel like it felt like it just happened because it was something that I wanted to do, and I just learned more about it and shadowed things. And I think, yeah, we find, well, I say we find, but I think what we're seeing now when we're looking at developing things like a steering group is that it's kind of like those natural pathways to shadow people who are still peers. Like I think hopefully I'm still seen as a peer at 21. But yeah, kind of finding that progression that people are interested in, even if it's, it might be leading the band, it might be writing music for the band, or it could be that more kind of like project management and organizational leadership, little scary stuff that people are interested in, and or a mix of different things as well. And then yeah, in terms of seeing that as a career, because there are those employment opportunities within Jubacana, which I think is really important as young artists to encourage and make a reality. That's a lot of waffle, but yeah, I think I'll hand back over to you, Joseph, in a second, but I'm going to steal your next point. I'm really sorry, but I do think that is something that's genuinely embedded, and I hope that is like visible and tangible for everyone in the group, because I know it really did feel like it when I was 15, 16. So yeah, but past that on back.
So yeah, like Freya just said, we try and sort of embed sort of everyone's sort of cultures, and whatever anyone wants to embed within the group, we try and do that within, whether it's within music or how we write the music. And then I think the last point on this is that we want to start to try and form a steering group, and we're sort of starting to develop that now, because we have members of the group that play drum kit, and sort of we've had a few new members recently that have, we've had people helping them out on their drums, and I think that's something we want to develop already. I think we've sort of got an unofficial one now, to be honest with you, so I think it will be it won't be too difficult to sort of embed within that. And like Freya says, it feels like you've also got sort of the peers as well, so it feels like obviously it's not Freya's sort of, she's got that role as well, but also feels nice to like a mate as well, sort of you can talk to him about stuff, but she also got that sort of leadership role as well within that. And I think we're going to hand back to Holly now to talk a bit more about breakout groups, I think.
That's great. Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, I just noticed a question just leading on from what we were talking about there in the chat, which is a great one. Somebody's asked, how do you create the model and generate funds to employ young people? So obviously, yeah, all this stuff is great, but how do you do it practically? So for Jubacana, what we've done is we've had a very, generous continued support from Youth Music and other small funders to develop a model in which we've got funds for like a lead artist each week. So that might be me or another adult on the team who's a bit more experienced. We might have support roles. Now, recently we've just taken on someone that's been volunteering, who's a sort of a retiring maths teacher in her mid-30s because she's actually leaving the teaching profession. She wants to do more of this kind of work. So we are taking her on as a member of staff. Even if it's part-time, it's just that, again, that transition into the workforce and saying these opportunities are there. We've got funds to fund, I think it's 4 or 5 of our youth leaders who are between 18 and 25 to offer 2 or 3 hours a week. I think it's the equivalent at about £25 an hour. So it's a competitive real world rate. And I'm happy to share that and be transparent, because I don't want to take on a young person and say, well, here's you joining the workforce, here's a tenner an hour to teach instrument lessons, even though you're a skilled person. Because actually that's not a reflection of what this workforce is about. So it's kind of closer to a real fee, so they can start to see how feasible that is as they join the workforce and see if that's doable for them. We've had some money from Youth Music's Recharge Fund, which was specifically around looking at employing young people and sourcing equipment to be able to run these kinds of sessions and facilitate this kind of stuff like a steering group and have that initial adult investment for that longer term, the long game, if you like, of supporting these young people over a long period of time. So we've actually specifically put some funds into that. I'm just very conscious of time, because obviously I want to make time to have a conversation and hand over to Liz. Sam, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to add to the answer about the question about kind of creating models and generating funds to employ young people. So one thing just to look at would be the incubator fund, which is specifically designed to create paid opportunities in organizations who are working in the kind of music industries, which is sort of plural term because music industries can be so broad. But yeah, basically that's a fund that at least 50% of any grant of the incubator fund has to go directly into the pockets of children, young people aged 18 to 25. So just another one to have a look at to add to that.
Great. Liz, I'm going to ask you permission here, because I don't want to assume it's all right, because I know there's a little crossover between what we're going to talk about. Would it be all right still to do the breakout room? Would that take up? Yeah. Okay, cool. I like to ask permission. It's nice, isn't it? So what I thought we would do now is just very, very briefly, because a lot of you are obviously, very experienced arts practitioners yourselves, clearly. It would be nice just to have like a 5-minute quick conversation in pairs with somebody else that perhaps you've not met with or worked with before. I believe Phoebe is clicking away at those breakout rooms, and just to maybe just think about what it is you are already doing that is promoting or enhancing or nurturing youth voice in your organization or your work. If that's not something that's relevant for you yet, perhaps you could think about what you would like to do, or or maybe the other person has a bit more experience and you're happy to hear from them. And then we'll come back together and just maybe over like 2 minutes, just quickly share, a few bullets, like we do this, bang, we do this, bang, just very, very quick little kind of bullets. So Phoebe, over to you, I think. So you should be able to join a breakout room now.
It's 2s and 3s.
Groovy.
And yeah, just go for it. And if someone's left on their own, I can move you to a room. You should be able to also choose them. I haven't put, Joseph, Freya, Sam room. I have put you in one, Jan, if you want to join any. Oh, just double check which one Jan's in. Oh, there's some unassigned. Liz, I will move. Oh no, Liz, Freya, Holly, Joe. Yeah.
Sorted. Oh, Jan's gone. Bye. Feel free if you guys want to join a group. I'm just gonna probably not do, just so I don't want to inhibit any conversations.
Yeah, that's all right.
Feel free if you want to, because just so Joseph and Freya, Freya knows already, but Joseph, sometimes when we do these kinds of meetings, whoever's facilitating the session sometimes like hops between rooms a little bit just to listen to what's going on, or not necessarily feed in loads, but unless somebody has a question and they want to ask one. So you're welcome to hop in a room if you want to do that, but I'm not going to just this once.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think everyone's in 2s and 3s. It looks like everyone's in them, so that's good.
Do you have a timer on the room there?
I don't, but as soon as I press close, it'll be a minute.
Right, okay, cool.
Okay,
So if we
countdown.
get them back at like, what's that, in about 3 minutes time?
Okay. So at like 38, 39, shall I close the room?
Yeah, because I think just for time, I think maybe it's worth, how do you want to do this, Liz? When we come back, do you want me to just very, very quickly just collect like 3 thoughts and then hand over to you?
Yeah, collect thoughts, because I feel like they've had the discussion, they're going to be like buzzing with ideas. I don't want to come back and be like, right, well, none of that matters, here's what I'm saying.
Precisely.
So
that's cool. I'm just conscious of time, but also I think it's important to
no worries at all.
give the space, isn't it? Cool. Yeah, I did ever think about some of the questions that got asked around things like, in terms of things like in COVID, we basically just did our very best to keep something going online, and we didn't manage to tap into everybody. I mean, it was successful across the board, but it wasn't cool. It wasn't like universally successful in that way in terms of getting everybody's voice and everybody present. It was just still challenging, even though we do tons of work in this area, we still struggled with it. But I don't know if that's something that's super, super important to share here right now.
Question, are we having a discussion at the end where we can ask questions and stuff? And if we are, is that going to be happening at the end of the hour, or does that need to be within the hour?
Probably within the hour, I would have thought.
Yeah, I guess some people might have planned to leave, but obviously if it goes over and you guys have like an extra 10 minutes and people are still engaged, totally up to you, but
okay,
guess we can just see how it goes.
Okay, cool. I'll try and quick 5 points.
Yeah, bang, bang, bang. Yeah, so maybe give them the 1 minute heads up now, even though it's slightly shorter than we said.
Close the room. Okay, they should be, they're getting 60-second countdown.
Harsh.
It was so hard to hear music.
Right, so have you sorted it all out now, guys? Right, okay, bye.
Loved all the things you were saying there. Super interesting. Super cool.
I mean, yeah. What I'd actually wanted to say at the start of the session was that I assume that, it's not something you can just suss out in an hour, or else no one would be here having this conversation. It would be lovely if you could just sort of dive in and go, right, like in the Matrix, I know Kung Fu, you just plug in and go, right, totally nailing, funding bids or youth voice or whatever. Looks like it's also nice to see some familiar faces in the group here. Just spied Lee there. Oh, and others I've met in different workshops over time. That's nice. So if you're just joining us back, we're just letting everybody join back in. But what we're going to do is just obviously invite people to share a couple of little bullets around what they do. That wasn't long enough. No, definitely not. Absolutely not. What like we said in the start, what we're hoping to do in this session is very, very quickly introduce ourselves, the work we do, get thinking about this, and then potentially have another conversation another time where we can actually meet together and have longer dialogues. Obviously 5 minutes, I was saying there, if it would be lovely if we could just go, right, well, we've just plugged in and done Kung Fu like in the Matrix. You just plug in and go, right, I've got youth voice, tick. Oh, can do funding bids, tick. But actually this is just the start of a dialogue and an introduction to each other, really. So apologies that this is not a longer session. Very quickly, just to share a couple of things that you might have even got a chance to even finish the sentence with each other. Just a couple of very short things that you are doing or ways that you are facilitating this positively in your organisation. So feel free to just shout out rather than waste time doing the hands up. Let's just have a little shout out.
I was going to feedback on what my partner said. Interesting conversation we had around the difference between youth-centered and youth-led, and how sometimes if you ask young people who haven't yet experienced the realm of what's possible, what they want to do, which has happened in my experience before, the answer is nothing, because we don't yet know what's possible. And so sometimes having that adult-led or experience-led engagement first, providing that kind of and the person I was speaking to said, I get the most out of young people once they've participated once, and then you can ask, what else do you want to do? But at the beginning, they might not be that interested. And that was a really interesting conversation.
Definitely, I could say a million things to that, but I'm not going to, just because of time. Does anyone want to share something else that cropped up for you?
Happy to share a little bit. So for those that are not familiar with the acronym, ABRSM is the Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music. So we're kind of primarily known for music exams, and we work around the world. I think something that I was sharing with music was we're at the very, very beginning of our journey, and we're in a kind of rather slightly bizarre position, really, that we have kind of more than 500,000 young people take our exams every year, and we don't have any youth voice program. And we exist for their benefit, but it's because the teachers tend to be the kind of gatekeepers of exams historically, and so we're looking at how can an organisation that does have a very large part of its work in kind of regulated qualifications, how can we work with alongside young people to shape our offer for them? And I think we're at the very beginning of our journey, and what success looks like for us in the next few months is actually just learning and listening to people. So we're very fortunate to work with lots of partner organisations. That's my role directly, and just to listen. And a lot of our kind of partners have already got established youth voice programs. So I think that we're just going to be spending. This is the first thing that we've done attending this, and so we're really excited to see where it might go. James,
that's brilliant. It really is. I think part of the conversation is just having the conversation. If you've got the desire to do these things, I would say 99% of the time it's going to happen naturally, because it's just going to be there and embedded in that energy to do it. I'm going to hand over to Liz in a moment. If you want to keep sharing some of these ideas and things that you are doing in your organisation, maybe spend the next 30 seconds doing that, so that you can definitely give Liz your full attention. But if you want to just share a list, and then perhaps we could pull some of those things and share them, and then arrange to have another conversation like this again. So just maybe tap in the chat something that you or your organisation is doing around facilitating youth voice being heard, or the development of youth voice for you. And if you don't want to share, that's also fine. Should have a countdown clock. We are very aware that this is a super short session. When we originally were asked to share a bit of a space to talk about this, one of the initial reactions was, how do you do that in an hour? Can't really do that in an hour, but we just wanted to meet and chat with you anyway. Liz, some of those things are coming in the chat. I don't know if to hand over to you if you want to pick up on any of those. Otherwise, feel free to take the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Holly. I will be picking up on some things said in the chat. It's all in here. So my name is Liz. I'm a freelance musician and a community musician. Some really quick background on me. I work in a lot of inclusive groups where we do loads of creative stuff. We do songwriting, work with music tech, etc., etc. And I wanted to talk about some practical ways to use youth voice. How do we squash youth voice? All this kind of stuff. Some brilliant discussions, and I'm kind of sad that I wasn't in any of these discussions, because I'm like, oh, what did everyone say? But hopefully we'll hold another space like this so that we can have more discussions like that. So just a little bit of background on me. I was once a part of community music projects myself, and I was the kid that had their hoodie up, wouldn't look at anyone, let alone speak to anyone. I wouldn't interact with anyone, and if I did have an idea, it was very narrow, and it was very much, it's my way, this is what it should be. And I've been in projects where my voice was heard, and I've also been in projects where my voice wasn't heard. 10 points to anyone who can guess which ones the ones I stuck with. But it's all about, like Holly was saying, nurturing youth voice and empowering young people to feel like they do have a say in what's happening. When I wasn't listened to in sessions for various different reasons, I always left the session feeling very deflated. I always left the session going like, was that it? And it kind of caused a lot of anxiety, and it made me not want to go back there, which completely missed the amazing opportunities within those projects. But when I was heard, I was always very empowered, so empowered that it made me pursue a career in music and then pursue a career in community music. So it just shows you how much power youth voice can have. So I wanted to talk about ways that we inadvertently squash youth voice without really knowing that we do so. And feel free to pop anything in the chat. If you have any thoughts about what I'm saying or any thoughts, pop it in the chat, and we'll have a look at those. But we oftentimes, I remember when I was learning to be a music leader, and my mentor said to me that she doesn't like the term "don't be silly" because it squashes creativity. Because how do you quantify what silliness is? How do you like go, this is silly and this isn't? How does a kid know that silly, why is silly a bad thing? You know, things like that. And it's language really matters a lot of the time. And it's about once we start inputting our own agenda and what we want to do onto these young people and into these groups, we are telling our young people that our ideas are more important than their ideas. And that causes a lot of problems. It causes a hierarchy, it causes power struggles, it causes all sorts of problems. And another way that I really wanted to touch on that we squash youth voice without really realizing it is pressure. Sometimes we're so desperate to have young people's voice heard that we constantly push for them to give us ideas. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And that causes a lot of pressure on the young person because maybe they're not ready to give those ideas. Maybe they're not giving it in a way they're comfortable with. That's an experience I had. I felt a lot of pressure at one project I was a part of. And my ideas were constantly being picked at that I ended up not going back just because of how anxious it made me feel. So that's just a really quick fire kind of thing, just very conscious of time. So really interesting, Beth, what you were saying about youth-centered versus youth-led. I always say that I work in a very youth-centered approach. And what does that mean? But it basically means that whenever I'm planning, running, or evaluating the session, I put aside my own ego, my own agenda, and I focus on the young people, what they want, what they enjoy, what they're getting out of this experience. And where possible, I try to get to know the young people I'm working with. Again, a very interesting thing was brought up with how after the first session, that's when youth voice is really harnessed. And when you know the young people you're working with, it informs your planning and practice. Obviously, this isn't always possible when you've only just met somebody. How are you supposed to get their ideas without knowing that young person? But that's where we work very openly. And we work in a very, I like to say, modular basis where we get blocks of this is what we're going to do. But if a young person decides, actually, I have a really cool idea that's going this way, we go that way. Because our way, even though this is what we planned, isn't necessarily what the young people want to do and what's going to empower the young people to come up with those ideas. Brilliant. So, sorry, I know I'm kind of firing stuff, but I feel like let's do this thing. Let's talk about ideas that I've used in my practice for youth voice and how I've harnessed ideas in the settings that I've been in. One way I do it is I create a code with the young people, and I don't call it rules because that sounds really strict. I don't call it any of that. I call it a code. I use code because I said, like, well, pirates had a code and kids love that. But I use a code so that the young people can create the framework around the session and they can feel in control of the space. And just some things that came forward that were completely not mine or my co-lead's idea were things like sharing is caring, give to others and they'll give back. And a way that we morph our own ideas to better kind of suit what young people want is, for example, the room we were in wasn't very accommodating for a lot of physical movement. So running would have been very dangerous in that room. There were wires, there were all sorts of risks to safety. So we said no running, but the young people were kind of like, we can't move. And they were kind of very upset that they weren't able to move in the room. So we adapted the rule and the young people were very happy with this, with saying no running, but dancing's okay. So you can dance around the room, but as long as you're not running, that's absolutely fine. And it just creates that space that the young people can hold and feel ownership of. Another idea that I gather ideas is I have an ideas pile where I chuck ideas into the center of a circle and then we vote on those ideas. Voting surprisingly works very well in groups. It gives everyone a collective chance to say what they would like and what they wouldn't like. And most of the time, young people understand that. They understand how the voting system works, especially when you explain it. I also like to utilize non-verbal gestures. That includes things like thumbs up. If I ask people to give me on a scale of 1 to 5, how did you find the session? They'll give me like fingers of how much, or like hands up is a very powerful one, like you were saying, Holly. And I always have multiple people in the room with me. It's not just me in the room, because the thing that I think I've realized is that I miss a lot. Just as one person, it's very hard to focus on 10 different young people at once. And you miss somebody's hand going up, you miss somebody's idea, maybe someone's spoken too quietly, maybe multiple people are speaking at once. And sometimes having another person to be able to go, well, actually, Liz, this young person had a really good idea, or, oh, that person had their hand up, but you didn't notice it, can be really helpful, because you're then making sure that every voice in that room is heard. I'm aware I'm going very fast, but I hope I'm making sense with everything I'm saying, and I'm very happy to have a discussion with anybody afterwards. I'm sure Sam and Phoebe will pass on contact details. Cool. So I also wanted to talk very quickly about inclusive and alternative and creative ways to gather feedback. You obviously have the obvious one of asking directly the young person, how do you find this? What's good and what's bad? But sometimes that's not the best way to ask questions. Sometimes young people are nonverbal. Sometimes that's just not how they communicate. Sometimes it puts a lot of pressure on young people. So what are different ways we can actually gather feedback and ideas? Well, a very odd one that I found works really well is Lego. I did a session where we were writing a song, and we were like, this song sounds like a dinosaur walking. And we kind of went along with that idea. And someone had the idea of calling the song Lego Dinosaur. And I kind of was like, okay, why should we call it Lego Dinosaur? And they had the idea of, I don't know, maybe the song's about someone building something out of Lego. And I was like, this is an idea we could use. So I brought in Lego. And I thought that we were just going to record sounds with it and it was all going to be good. I had a young person in that group who kind of is very much in their own world. They don't talk a lot, or when they do talk, it's very much inward and they're talking to themselves. And giving them the Lego, even though they weren't using it necessarily for musical purposes, it enabled them to then have something to use to be able to express how they're feeling. And that was that was eye-opening to me. I was like, whoa, there are some very strange things that we don't necessarily see a connection with that work in empowering young people in order to share their ideas. Another one that I think, Holly, you mentioned was like playing instruments, maybe dynamics. If you play really loudly, that's a good answer. If you play quietly, it's not a very good answer. Or tapping how many times, like 1 to 5. I always do 1 to 5, and I always get someone going like 1 million. And then I'm like, that's not in the bounds of the question. But like getting them to tap the instrument however many times they feel responds to a question. Faces and the traffic light system is something used in an organization that I work with, Mac Makes Music. They use a traffic light system with faces, and they use things like baselines. So we ask young people at the beginning of a project how they feel about themselves, how they feel about music, and then at the end of the project just to see where that's gone, how they feel. And basically just knowing that verbally isn't everything. Being verbal is not the only way to communicate. You can communicate via body language. You can communicate majorly via music. There are many different ways to create a space where everybody's voices are heard and harnessed without exchanging words necessarily. So that was a very quick fire, chucking things into the pool. I hope that makes sense with everybody. I'm just having a look at the chat now because a lot of people have put some really good stuff in the chat.
Liz, just to pick up on one of the things while you were speaking, there was something there from Beth around what happens when you've got like the typical golden child who always says all the answers, and or that family that always sends all the feedback but no one else does. what I tend to do more so now in that situation is kind of I look at who usually answers all the questions, and then I wouldn't say I ignore their feedback, but I slightly put less emphasis on it than the people who haven't spoken. And then I might actually mentally make a note of person 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 didn't say anything for the last 3 weeks. What I'm going to do is in the middle of the session, go and sit next to them and offer them a biscuit and say, oh, what do you reckon about this? And have that little sort of sneaky ways of doing these things. So it's not always public forum, because many of us won't always like either having our cameras on or volunteering something in a group or speaking in this way as experienced adults. So why would we expect a child or a young person to have those skills as well? I wouldn't now from experience. But that was something that just picked up on Liz's brilliant ideas there of kind of different practical ways. And someone else is asking about tools as well, Liz, there.
I also just want to add something that I was like, oh, I was meant to say that at the beginning, but I'll say it now. If you're going to take anything away from today, I'd say the thing to take is that you're always learning. I'm always learning. Holly, I'm sure you're always learning. Everybody in this room will always be learning. The only thing constant in life is change. And if that's the case, it means our young people are constantly changing. They're constantly growing. And we're constantly changing, we're constantly growing. And if we don't embrace that change and embrace just the different quirks of life, then we're missing out on some really creative and some really life-changing things in that. So if you're going to take anything away, we're always learning. Sometimes we are the students and the young people are the teachers.
So true, Liz. I think that was a really good, I've never heard that before about the one thing the only constant thing in life is change. And I think that's so right. And I also it's about, I suppose, it's being brave to be kind of experimental, to be creative, like Liz, the idea, the things that you kind of do in your sessions. And I think it should be fun, and it should be exciting to kind of embed these youth voice principles and activities and ways of empowering youth voice across organizations. So thanks very much, Liz, and Holly, Joseph and Freya, thank you as well for for sharing kind of all that you do and your approach. We've probably got I think we might have time just in answer to the question about the tools and stuff. What we'll send out after this session is the chat and some of the ideas that have come out and some resources that you might find useful. But once we send out that email, feel free to email us back and just say, who can we, for example, where are you based? What other organizations can we connect you up with in your area that might be doing youth voice work already that can share ideas? And we want to kind of help as much as we can. So if you have questions, respond to us, ask Holly, ask Liz, we're really happy to kind of help everyone sort of develop their work in this area. But I suppose we've got 1 or 2 minutes. So maybe, does anyone have any kind of questions they want to ask at the moment? We've got some in the chat. Oh, thanks, Holly. You'll see Holly's just shared the sort of contact information in the website to Jubacana.
Don't tell anyone, but this has been my favorite Empower Hour yet. So thank you so much. I'm just going to pop a survey in as well, just to inform our next one. If you've got any questions and ideas, maybe you could also pop them in that survey so I can collate them. If you feel like nothing, you need some more questions answering, etc. But this has been such a nice session. Thank you so much for all your engagement as well. And do ask any questions.
Oh, sorry. I think I had a delay there. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Just to pick up on a few things just before we finish, I think one thing that comes through these sessions for me as someone that attends these kind of things pretty regularly is that I often leave them feeling like I know a bit less than I knew at the start initially, because what I've done is I've gone from thinking I know this much about something or how I feel about it to then hearing all these other people are doing all this stuff. Should I be doing that stuff? Why aren't I doing that stuff? Or, oh, that's interesting. But actually what these spaces are for me, I think, is a kind of a chance to just physically see people oh, okay, that's from that organization. Or who are they? Or, oh, that's a cool idea. Maybe I'll just do that one thing. And maybe that'll completely transform my approach to youth voice by doing Lego or whatever it is, And I think we couldn't possibly start to really tap into what this is in an hour. Otherwise, like we said in the start, we'd probably already all feeling quite confident about the stuff that we're doing around any of these topics that we discuss. So thank you for bearing with us on the time that we've got today. And I would love, if you don't know me, I am someone that really genuinely mean that I would love to have this conversation any further with anyone and connect you with our young people at Jubacana who are equally kind of switched on and excited about this stuff. If anyone would like to, please genuinely pick us up on that, because we're not just saying it to say it because we have to. We actually want to. I'm sure Liz feels the same.
I'm exactly the same. I was like, yes. So I'll also pop my contact details in the chat. But if anyone wants a conversation, please come to either me or Holly. And we're happy to keep that discussion. Let's keep the discussion going. Always keep that discussion going.
Yes, Beth. Yes, yes, yes. Can we bring some of your young people to come and learn from yours? Yes, please. That's exactly what we do. Yes, you win a special prize. No, because that's something that we're really keen on. We're based in Oldham, but obviously we've got even things within our project that I didn't mention, like travel expenses to help people come and visit us if they want to. Things like that can be done. So if you want to hook up with us, please do get in touch after this, and we'll just make that happen, just organize that. There you go. Anyone else who wants to come, maybe we could have an open day and a party. There you go. That would be excellent. There you go. See, right. Cool. Speed dating.
Yeah, and I think this definitely, like these, I suppose, yeah, like these sessions, it's been a quick fire kind of journey through Youth Voice, but it's the start of a conversation, and hopefully by the looks of it, it's the start of some real connections and opportunities. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming. We'll follow up, and yeah, like I said, if you've got other questions, if you want us to link you up with organizations, if you want resources, so on and so forth, just let us know, and yeah, we'll be happy to help. But yeah, thanks again, Holly, Liz, Joseph, Freya as well. Like, thanks very much, and yeah, we'll see you hopefully all soon.
And a big thank you to Sam and Phoebe as well for giving us this opportunity.
Defo, and a bye bye to Jan soon. Oh, sadness. Maybe take your mics off and say bye as well, like we did at the start, if you have to leave. Hi.
Cheerio.
Bye bye. Thank you so much.